Hi, this is Ellen Cookman, and I have a YouTube channel where I talk a lot about special needs planning in California. Well, today, I'd like to introduce my husband, Scott Cookman.
Hello.
And the two of us are going to talk about our journey as special needs parents, especially with our son, Caleb.
Yeah, I'm really happy to be able to share our story. I think it was good for us in our journey to know that we weren't alone, and I imagine a lot of other couples need to hear that too. So our son Caleb, who's currently 9, he was a great kid, happy kid, used to eat just about everything, but he was a little slow to development. He walked late. I think he was about 15, 16 months, maybe even 18 months. Talked late, but he did end up talking. And so we were going along. You know, there were some concerns, but I actually, my background is a special education teacher. I think I was working in an SDC class at the time. And I was always just mentally looking at him to see if he might have some common challenges that I'd seen in my work. And, you know, he was an early reader. So I'm like, okay, I know he doesn't have visual processing. He could understand directions. It's probably not auditory processing. He wasn't very good with pen and writing, but it could happen. So I'm like, okay, sensory motor. So I'm going through my mind, and I'm like, you know what? He's pretty fine. He's just quirky. But a lot of friends in our life, other professionals, were telling us that we should have him looked at. And eventually got to the point of where I was just tired of people asking and making suggestions. So I'm like, okay, let's just make this appointment. Let's get our piece of paper saying that he's fine. And then we can just show everyone and then stop and, just go on. So I take him to his appointment, and it was interesting because I'd given a lot of assessments over the course of my career. I'm watching Caleb do this, and I'm thinking, oh no, he is not doing well. And I'm like this, and I'm like, but he can't. Anyway, cutting to the end, the psychologist comes out and she lets us know, yeah, he has autism. And I was just like, what? I mean, I think I was very calm at the time, but just walking out, I was freaking out, and I had fears going through my head. What does this mean? Does this mean he's going to have to live at my home all of his life? Does this mean that he's going to be alone all of his life? It's weird fears and no idea. And we immediately called some friends who also have autistic kids, and I had a sit-down dinner, and I'm just sharing, and Ellen's sharing, all the different fears, and what they tell us is just like, hey, we were there in the same situation. We were, had the same kind of thoughts, but after time and, their kids, I think one of them was an adult and the other one was close to being an adult. And they're like, you know what? We can't tell you what the answer is going to be, but we know that it's not as scary as you think it is. And we took it seriously. We got him some early interventions. We had an occupational therapist. We had a behaviorist. And I think they did wonders working with Caleb and getting him ready to do well at school. But I think what really is, we had our second son who's neurotypical. And, it's like, as the time went on, we'd see him hit milestones and think, oh, okay, that's what we were missing. But one of the interesting things about Caleb is that he had absolutely no, judgmental? Is that the word? He was the least judgmental kid I'd ever met. It didn't matter what the kid looked like or what the kid acted like. Caleb wanted to be his friend. Mm-hmm. And Isaac was not like that. Isaac had a lot of issues having empathy and thinking, man, I don't know if I want to hang out with them. There was this one friend of ours whose kid is blind, had some drooling issues, and Isaac would be like, I don't know if I like hanging out with him. It's kind of weird. And Caleb's just like, hey, let's go play. And I think finding out that maybe it's, I don't know, but just that uniquely beautiful thing about Caleb, I just don't think we'd have that in the world if maybe he was typical.
So there's a few things that I'd love to add as we go through our journey, and it's always interesting to hear Scott's perspective. I remember when we actually got the written assessment, and we looked at it, and it said, confirmed that he had autism and also that he was borderline ADHD, and which hasn't really panned out. But I remember it was like an out-of-body experience where we were looking at this paper, like, what does this mean for our lives? Like Scott was saying, will he ever have friends? Will he ever move out of the house? And as we learn, there's a broad range of behaviors and abilities and skills of kids on the spectrum. And so we had to learn, okay, what does our son need? And each kid is different. And that's the way I like approaching families also, is, what skills does each child have? We even sent both of them to a preschool where I loved how they said, each kid has special needs. Each kid has some need that they might have, The other thing I remember is that because of Scott's background and, behavioral issues, and he was really convinced that Caleb didn't have autism. And it took quite some convincing for him to come around. And I remember going to, we started pivotal response therapy, which is a great intervention that I highly recommend if your child qualifies. And I remember the psychologist watching Caleb for about 15 minutes. And then she talked to Scott and she said, okay, do you see this behavior and this behavior and this behavior? These are all on the spectrum. And it was like a light bulb went off in Scott's brain. And he was like, oh, that's what it looks like. Because so many of us grow up, we don't know what to look for. We only think of kids who might, have more severe autism, where they can't communicate or they have different behaviors. So there was just a lot of education that we needed to go through. And it was so relieving when Scott, I felt like that was the moment that he was really on board. And I see a lot of families where sometimes one parent doesn't come to that understanding, and it's very challenging for their marriage. So I'm really grateful that we were able to overcome that hump and be on the same page. And I'm also very grateful that Scott has that background, because then he really took the pivotal response therapy and the other therapies and he ran with them, because I didn't know much about it. I may be a special needs planner, but I don't know so much about behavioral issues in kids. And so it was great that I have a husband who could do that.
Thanks.
So it's interesting because I volunteered in the special needs community for many years. We have a church where a lot of people are aware of developmental disabilities, and I was really involved there. But then becoming a parent of a child with special needs really opened my eyes to the experience that parents have. And so I went from being an advocate in the community to being an advocate and a parent in the community. And I'm really grateful to have that experience and to be able to see now, how do we support Caleb and Isaac in their relationship with each other? Really teaching Isaac about, okay, awareness of autism. What does that mean? How can I be more patient with Caleb? Teaching Caleb, okay, what does it mean to have autism? How do you stand up for yourself and make sure that you're not bullied? How do you work together with your brother? So, at each point of their journey, now that they're ages 9 and almost 8, there's going to be more things that they learn, more challenges that they encounter. But I'm grateful we get to go through it together and then also learn more what the parents that we work with at our firm, what they go through, and how we can best help them as well. Thank you for listening to our journey, and we look forward to connecting with you.